Last video before the hurricane. You probably won't see me for a while. But I noticed that Dave Chappelle's Sticks and Stones got a 0. Wow. How embarrassingly talentless and worthless the Rotten Tomatoes crew is. If you want to make him look bad, give him a 50 or a 60. And say, some of the old Dave was there, but really, it looks like he's lost not just half a step, but about half a dozen. Skip this one, Chief. And poof, quite a few people would skip it. But if you say 0% based on 5 critics, none of which give a legitimate review, they just say, Dave is, old and old news, and Dave is what was they say? Someone called him like your racist uncle, and somebody else said something like his ideas are half formed. All of which is a lie. And the thing is, so many people are mad at him for targeting marginalized groups, of which there are none in the United States. But anyway, Dave Chappelle spent as much time as anyone else, doing the one group that he makes fun of the most. White people. He shat on white people for a quarter of the show. Now, the great thing is, he shat on progressives for about half the show. And he made sure to stick it into the LGBT, as he should have. Because, and I'm glad that he especially stuck it into the trans, as he should have. Because as a person who's probably known more trans people than 90 to 95% of the United States, as a person who has made friends with more trans people, and the person who has shown an interest in how they relate with each other and what makes them tick, I gotta say, there's absolutely no fucking reason whatsoever why trans people need special treatment or need to be protected from treatment. A lot of people say, they kill us. No, trans people kill themselves. And it's no surprise because gender dysphoria is constantly comorbid with schizophrenia. It's constantly comorbid with borderline personality disorder. It's constantly comorbid with bipolar disorder. All of which are a lot of disorders that come with a heightened suicide rate. And transsexual propaganda, because there's no such thing as gender, so what they actually are, transsexuals, because they have gender dysphoria or sexual dysphoria, and the treatment for it is to sexually transition. Therefore, they are transsexuals. There's no insult in that. It just is what it is. However, they are trained to have a strong hatred of, fear of, and avoidance of psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists and anybody who would diagnose them with anything, because they have been told that gender dysphoria is not a mental illness, when it is. It is a fact that I literally had this conversation with a trans person on a trans Discord server that was all about being trans. I said, well, it is a mental. They were trying to say all this shit about when I said there's such thing as gender, and they're like, do you know where you are? And I'm like, yeah, I'm on a server for transsexuals, and they're like, well, no, you're a server for transgender people. I'm like, there is literally no such thing as gender, that it's debunked science, right? It's bullshit that there is literally no science to gender whatsoever. And they're like, and they're, and then and then I explain, they're like, what do you think I am? Well, you're transsexual, and you have what is currently known as gender dysphoria, which is a mental illness, and the way you treat it is to sexually transition. And they're like, gender dysphoria is not a mental illness. And I'm like, first of all, yes, it is. Because you think you are the sex that you are not, you have a mental illness. It's a fact. It's a rather severe one. You think you are the sex that you are not. It's a big deal, and it obviously has a very radical goddamn fucking treatment. They cut your dick and balls off, dude. It's kind of a big deal. And they're like, well, it's actually factually scientifically not. a mental illness. And I'm like, okay, who says so? I'm like, well, actually, the Academy of Diagnostic Science or whatever or something removed it from the DSM manual. And it said it's not a mental illness. And I'm like, well, where'd you hear that? And it's like it's in the DSM. I'm like, wait a minute. It says that gender dysphoria is not a mental illness in the diagnostic manual for mental illnesses. Okay. Well, we have had generation after generation of people who lie when they say we want to remove the stigma from mental illness. They are lying because they won't admit that things that are a mental illness are a mental illness. Guess what else is technically a mental illness? Homosexuality. And what's the treatment for it? Letting them stick their dick in other dudes. Who cares? Are you saying that homosexuality is unnatural? Everything that occurs in nature is natural, you dumbass. Are you saying it's abnormal? No more than 4% of the population is even bisexual, let alone homosexual, so yes. Yes, it's abnormal. Are you saying it's bad? Can be. It puts you in increased risk of degenerate behaviors, drug use, drug addiction, and drug overdose. Puts you at much, much higher risk of suicide, like some other disorders. Puts you at a higher risk of contracting AIDS and other severe or even possibly fatal STDs. It can be a bad thing. Also can kind of suck to be a gay person when pretty much there's almost no such thing as a monogamous gay relationship, and that gay marriages have a massive occurrence of divorce. It almost never is happily ever after for a gay person. So from a place of sympathy, yeah, it can kind of fucking suck terribly to be gay. And it definitely sucks terribly to be trans. And there's so many people who would take everything I just said about those people and say what you just said was hurtful, when absolutely everything I said was a recognition of a struggle from a place of compassion for gays and trans. But because the LGBT culture is a culture of hate currently, and the hate and bigotry, racism, and all of the above, if you're straight, they hate you. If they're white, they hate you. And if they're a man, they hate you. They literally fucking hate you. It's not they fear you. It's not they worry that you hate them. No, they literally just straight up fucking hate you. They wish you would die and go away. They think you're a disease that should be removed from the world. Literally, a lot of them say that. Now, not all of them, of course. But all of them have been trained, like black people throughout fucking the past 50 years, to hate white people more than they ever did when they were actually being oppressed. So when Dave Chappelle comes and very lightly said, you guys are fucking obnoxious assholes who basically hurt everyone around you because you are the most vicious people of an already vicious group, you wonder why people won't accept you. Here's the way. You don't get accepted by being a fucking violent, vicious cunt. You don't get equality. You don't fight fascism by literally being a jackbooted thug in the street. We had like Antifa. You don't get tolerance by being normalized. Because guess what? Gays and even trans people all got normalized. And you know what they said? When they asked, would you like to go home? Would you like to be done? You won, yay! And they went, no. No, the revolution is forever. The revolution is forever. The revolution is forever. The revolution is forever. And we went, yeah, fuck you. No, the revolution is done. Go home. Get the fuck out of my face. Hatred. No. Intolerance. Yes, I'm not tolerating your bullshit. Are you invalidating my experience? And on and on and on we go. Would you like to be normalized? Be fucking normal. Don't go running through the streets with dicks strapped to your head. Don't go try to fuck kids. Don't go trying to tell us it's okay to fuck kids. Don't go telling us it's okay to cut the dicks off of kids either. Not acceptable. You can do the gender reassignment thing at a negotiable age. A lot of people say straight up age of consent. Well, I have some sympathy for people because in order to pass, the earlier you transition, the better you pass. I have met a trans person who got it all cut off early, like 11, which is a kind of scary date. And they said, you know, it saved their life, and they do pass for female. Way better than Blair White does. And Blair White more or less passes for female, or is the standard for passing for female. So I can kind of understand it. But a lot of people don't seem to realize that being quote-unquote trans, or even, I swear to God, this is the scary thing that everybody is afraid to admit, being quote-unquote gay or homosexual, you're not born that way. I've heard of people who said, we always knew you were gay from as soon as you could talk. I've heard of those people. I've also met people who said, you know, I didn't really know I was gay until some pedophile fucked my face when I was 10, and I realized this is what I'm into. Are you sure about that? And there's so many people who are in these insulated college environments where trans people are venerated as fucking a superior race of some kind. They receive every single accommodation, privilege, and fucking courtesy imaginable. And they see that armies of sycophants will not only just, you know, compliment and be nice to these people, but they will protect them from anybody who even looks at them wrong. That they'll run straight in, just to, strangers will run in to kick the fucking shit out of, or at least yell at and scream at and beat their fucking harpy wings at anybody. So why wouldn't you? And so the amount of people like I've met on Twitter who are male presenting with a beard, wearing guy clothes, saying she, her pronouns, I'm trans, and expecting to be taken seriously. And you would be surprised at all the people who have the gender dysphoria, how furious cunts like those guys make them. And yet those people aren't red-pilled, and they won't be red-pilled, because you cannot accept reality when you are required to reject reality to maintain all these fucking perks and shit. So I think it's perfectly reasonable to take those people down a peg, because the hilarious fucking thing is everybody is mad at Dave Chappelle for shitting on trans people. But guess what, everybody? You know what the fucking sad thing is? Dave Chappelle was punching up